That's right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bridging the Gap here on the Jersey First TV network. As always, I'm AJ Malillo.
And I am Stephen Rombolo.
And you can get all your Jersey First content by hitting that notification bell, subscribing to our YouTube, subscribing to our Vimeo. You could check out Real Talk with Fernando. You could check out the Nader Narrative. You could check us out on jerseyfirst.org, where you can get all of your Jersey First content, sign up for the pledge, sign up for the newsletter. And of course, you can also check us out on onnj.com on demand anytime you want Bridging the Gap content. Steven, before we jump in, I do have a quick funny story. So, as you and some of the listeners, I'm sure, know, I do a radio show on Villanova's campus um, on Tuesday nights, right? And
Yeah.
I jumped in and I start all the shows the same. And I've started all the shows the same pretty much since we've always done it. It's always like, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of X. So the show there is Thoughts of Yesterday. And I said Bridging the Gap on the air. And I was like, that's the wrong show.
Ah!
Like, that's not
Shameless
right.
plug.
I was like, well, but if you're interested, because you're not allowed to do any calls of action,
True.
I do that show. I do that show too. But yes. So
That's awesome.
I thought that was funny. And then I get home, the first thing my brother said is, hey, I really enjoyed the radio version of Bridging the Gap today. I was like, you know what? I make one mistake
And you can never live it down.
and I'll never live it down. Exactly.
Yeah, no, those are the rules. Come on. Come
But
on.
anyway, how was your week? How you doing, Steve?
Dude, it was great, you know. It's last full week of classes, which is surreal. Um, so kind of wrapping everything up, switching gears to get ready for finals, start studying for all that, which has been interesting. Definitely a different beast than anything I've had to conquer academically before this moment. But nonetheless, I think my performance throughout the semester has been exactly what I wanted it to be. And I have full faith and confidence in myself that when it's time to, show up and do the thing for these finals, I'll be prepared. I know the material. I've spent, the past however many weeks learning for these moments that are about to come. And I'm going to do what I do best, which is show up, give my all, and hopefully walk out, if not on top, damn near close to it.
There you
So,
go.
that's been happening. I'm excited. I get to, plant feet on New Jersey soil next week to go up celebrate the holiday with family. So I'm very much looking forward to that. That'll be like the nice little break before the madness of finals. But all things considered, it's just been the final push to get all these classes wrapped up. And here we are. I have one more writing assignment to turn in on Tuesday, and then I am a free bird to study as much as my eyes and brain can possibly handle. So
There you go. There you go. See, here's the little secret. My favorite part of the semester is reading week, is studying for finals. I enjoy it more than anything else. Sort of like sitting down with the materials, letting them soak in, and really understanding them. I think it's great. So I enjoy it more. I might be crazy for that. We'll see how you like it when you get there, but that all sounds
yeah,
good, and I'm sure you're gonna do great.
yeah, it's like I said, this is what we've been doing all this for. So I knew this going in from the jump. Finals were going to be hard. Finals are the toughest part of this experience, and we made it here. We're not going to look at the challenge and turn away. We're not those kind of
Yeah.
people. So that's it.
Then
And
and then you're
preparation's key.
one semester done. Boom. Easy.
Yeah, one one semester closer to making my dreams come true.
There you go. That's exactly it. I'm like
That's it.
3 weeks away from being done, halfway done with law school. So that's kind of crazy to think about, wrap my brain
That's
around.
bizarre.
Yeah. Today, you could tell I'm in a different place. I'm at the school recording this right now because we had the final round of the 64th annual Remels competition here at Villanova. It was awesome. We had some really awesome judges that came to judge the final round. It was Judge Pamela Harris of the Fourth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, Judge David Wecht of the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, and Justice Fabian Pierre-Louis of the New Jersey Supreme Court. And they were an awesome panel. I had 4 friends that were competing this year in the final round. I'm proud of each and every one of them. I'm so proud of the winners. It was a great, great competition. They deserved it. They worked really hard. They were awesome moral advocates. and it was so cool to watch it in action and see those like real judges, real Supreme Court justices of and district judges asking questions of like like it was a made up case, but like a legitimate possible fact pattern that was very real and interesting. So it's pretty awesome to see.
No, that is very exciting. Everything that we've been hearing about it for the past few weeks, like I said, just sounds exciting and something awesome to be a part of. But I am happy that you made it to the finals also, just in a different sense. So I'm sure there's gratification there.
Sure, I was there. I was there. My, the one team argued off brief, so they didn't write their brief about it, and I was told that like my argument helped shaped their off brief argument, which is really cool to hear. And I was glad to hear that. And they did a great job. They wound up winning the competition, so I'm really proud of them. They're some of my closer friends, so I'm super proud of them. They did an excellent job.
AJ,
But
you're
anyway,
a
Steve.
great guy to have in the corner. I just want to say that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I try. I try. But anyway, Steve, we do have some stories to talk about. I think it's going to be a quick show, guys. It is pretty late here when we're recording this, and we're busy guys. And then also we got Thanksgiving coming next week, so you got a lot going on. You got a lot going on. But anyway,
Lot going on.
we still got good stories for you. Don't you worry about that. I just have to find them. There. Here it is. Okay. Steve, I'll ask you. They're both
Yeah.
dealt with the earlier election from earlier this month. Do we want to talk a little bit about school boards first, or do we want to talk about home, Tom's River, Seaside area?
I say we take it home. We'll close up with the school boards because I got a cool little story on the school boards also.
Right, perfect. So this is a story that I think, Stephen, you can attest to greatly. We had
Yes.
an interesting thing that happened. So Seaside Heights, small town, as we all know, on the shore there, and their mayor, Tony Vaz, won another 4-year term this November. And one of the big things that he ran on was redevelopment of the borough, especially after Superstorm Sandy. This was an opportunity to rebuild Seaside Heights and give it a different reputation, a more family-oriented reputation. And a lot of money is coming into Seaside Heights. Redevelopment projects are in the works, and they've been completed at more than a dozen former motel sites in the town. A retail and housing are planned for properties along the boulevard, including a 10-story complex to be built on the site of a former steel skeleton building. The mayor received many votes. He won pretty handedly going away, and you are going to see a lot more money go into Seaside with that, including one of the things that they're doing is changing multifamily homes that were once considered like party centers, animal houses as they called them, let's just for like prom and things like that, to single family units and more, bringing more of that family aspect to Seaside Heights. Now, that is juxtaposed with the big town that's right next to Seaside Heights, which is Toms River, where the new mayor-elect Roderick won, and he won pretty much going away with it as the Republican, but he shocked in the primaries, winning and ousting the incumbent. And his whole pitch was that we don't want more buildings and development in Toms River. We want less. We moved to Toms River because we didn't want to be in a city. We wanted to be in a suburb. So we want less building and less development in the town. We want it to be more open and more of a suburban style. So the question is, these are two Republican mayors, one in towns literally right next to each other. What do you say for this complete difference in the electorate?
So here's I got many thoughts, many things to say about this. First and foremost, I think in my position here as I'll take the liberty of calling myself a journalist because we're talking about stories reporting on the news. So important for me to disclose that I have some very deep ties to Seaside Heights, specifically Mayor Vaz is a good friend of mine. So I don't want anything that I'm saying to be misconstrued as anything other than my own thoughts and opinions on the issue. first and foremost. I think what's important to talk about, and they mentioned this in the article, and I think it's Roderick that makes this point. People move to different towns for different things, right? So, what the people of Tom's River want, even though it is just a bridge across from Seaside Heights, totally different than what the people of Seaside Heights want. And I think that's a really valid claim for Roderick to make. However, the glaring juxtaposition is hard not to ignore, and I think it boils down to exactly the kinds of developments that both of these mayors are addressing and why they're addressing them certain ways. So Mayor Vaz in Seaside Heights, he's been on this crusade for quite some time, probably since about 2015, I think is when he took the position as mayor initially, to redevelop Seaside Heights to become a family friendly town. And Seaside Heights has a brilliant, brilliant history. And it wasn't really until the late 80s, early 90s, specifically, I could pinpoint the issue to when MTV started, kind of like, for some reason, they chose Seaside Heights as this hot spot, this party town. And they did a lot of media campaigning over a variety of shows, most popularly The Jersey Shore, that put out an image of Seaside Heights that was really contrarian to what the history of Seaside Heights always was, being that it was a family town, really truly Americana, like went from dirt roads with a post office to, you're building a boardwalk, and there is a brilliant, beautiful history there. And I understand why Mayor Vaz wants to preserve that. And I think in preserving that beautiful history, you do have to tackle the adverse image that is in direct contention with the history of Seaside Heights. So I think he's justified there. You look at what Roderick is opposing, and I think we've spoken about this on this show, I believe, on other platforms, but a lot of the rhetoric that Roderick and his team were espousing, especially in his earlier bouts for councilman and his previous bout for mayor, dealt largely with issues on the borders of Tom's River and neighboring communities. And to be frank about the issue, I believe that they were in discussion, particularly about developments that were going to bring different communities into Tom's River, and there was a lot of opposition to it because it was going to create a culturally diverse Tom's River that I guess a lot of voters were unhappy with. And so those are the sorts of developments, these super residential, where you're building like one of those houses that it's just kind of like a loop, and you just pop houses all around it, and boom, you put up a new neighborhood in 4 to 6 weeks. Those are the things that I think he's in opposition against. And if that's what the people in Tom's River care about, if that's what their property interests are, if that's where they lie, power to them, go for it. I think the important thing to talk about, though, like you said, is two Republican mayors are two very clearly different initiatives, two very clearly different circumstances, though. So I think the two of them can exist in close proximity and not be related to each other. I don't think it's a beautiful commentary. Oh, Mayor Vaz is doing the right thing for developments. Oh, Mayor Roderick, not. I think that they're both doing exactly what public servants should do, which is serving the needs and desires of the people that put them into office. And I think it says, if nothing else, more about the populations of these two neighboring towns and what they value and what they want their mayors to do. I think that's a more interesting conversation.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that that's exactly how it should be framed. These are not people that should be pitted against each other. I think that Tom's River benefits when Seaside Heights benefits, and vice versa, right? So if Seaside Heights builds up to be this beautiful, family-oriented shore town, guess what? Everybody in Tom's River benefits beautifully from that. Not only do they get to just cross the bridge over to this nice town, but guess what? A lot of people are going to be driving through Tom's River to get to Seaside, stopping at Tom's River businesses, partaking in Tom's River as this more, if there's going to be less development, this more open, free air, beautiful scenic places with places to walk and a nice downtown community, and which Tom's River offers already, and hopefully will continue to offer. Now, that being said, Stephen, you kind of tiptoed around it. I don't think there's any reason to tiptoe around it. A lot of the beginning of this of this debate of development and the rhetoric surrounded it was if not overtly, certainly close to being overtly anti-Semitic rhetoric, right? And
Yes. Yes.
that's where the problem lies in that rhetoric. If you don't want Tom's River to be overly developed and you say, look, we want a suburban area with not, not a city, and we don't want to make it feel like a city, and we don't want to overburden the population with more and more people. We want to keep the population where it is for the most part. That's a different argument, right? Where it comes into problems is when you start to make direct attacks to groups of people coming in for
Yes.
whatever reasons that you offer, right? So that's where the difference lies. Now, that all being said, this is a commentary of the voting populace, and I think you're absolutely right in saying, look, these are two different communities. They're next to each other, they're neighbors, they benefit from each other, but they're different and they have different goals. And I couldn't agree more. I think Tony Vaz is doing exactly what Seaside Heights needs. I agree with the platform he has put out there on these redevelopment plans. And quite frankly, I don't think that Tom's River needs to be this needs super high, more super development within the town. Like, it needs some small fixes here and there, maybe re-up some things, get some more money into certain places like the Ocean County Mall, which they're doing. But for the most part, I think it's spot on. People don't move to Tom's River to have more people around them. They move to Tom's River to be in a fairly big community. It is one of the bigger towns in the state, but feels like a small town. That's one of the appeals of Tom's River. It's a big town that feels small. And
Absolutely.
and I respect that too. But yeah, so that's just, unless you have anything more to add, that's just one of the effects that these local elections had, even though they don't seem that big because it is an off-year election. But you get these two mayors, and they're going to make their towns look, go in a completely different direction than maybe challengers would have.
Yeah. I think so. Like you said, you touched on it. I was dancing around it before that a lot of the commentary regarding development in Tom's River was, prima facie anti-Semitic, and that's reprehensible and not the conversation that we're having. But another issue that a lot of these voters have that I think is just worth highlighting because it does affect the residents of Tom's River, and this article does a great job at illustrating this. But the development has adverse effects on property value also. So there was since what is this? Since 2020, home prices in Tom's River have skyrocketed almost 50%. So they have an average here. The average home in Tom's River was selling for about $360,932 in 2020. This year, that number is $537,950. So this development that's going on and the amount of money that's coming into these areas, not to mention the township of Tom's River engaged in an agreement with a housing advocacy group back in 2017 that they're required to provide over almost 1,300 units of affordable housing. Tom's River, it seems, has a very clear crisis overall when it comes to housing development, who we're awarding these contracts to, what kind of residents, we're going to supply this housing for. And I think that principally is more important and needs to be addressed. And I think one thing that Roderick is going to do, he seems pretty adamant that he's going to do, is kind of clear it up, de-muddy the waters, figure out exactly, the agreement that Tom's River entered into to provide 1,300 units of affordable housing is the fourth highest in the state for townships. Think about that. Think about the other larger cities and municipalities that exist, and Tom's River has the fourth largest commitment to provide low income housing. Is that something this community is really, able to do, prepared to do? Is this something that the residents right now want to do, being that it was agreed to in 2017? You're talking 6 years ago at this point. So housing reform is a big issue for a variety of reasons in Tom's River, not just the rhetoric that we had put forward. And to the overall point, again, I think it's just up to what the residents and the voters want out of an issue that has real effects. It affects their property value. It affects, the desire of people to move into or leave a place, because as your property value goes up, it changes your taxes. And, it's not worth explaining the entire system, but to the overall point that you made, these elections have consequences, big or small, and that's why your participation is so vital, and making sure that you understand, where these candidates lie on these positions, because as we've illustrated the whole time, you're talking about two candidates of the same party who have two very different approaches to dealing with housing and development in their communities. So,
Absolutely. And to go with that, like another thing that is big when it comes to these local town elections and where your money is going and how your taxes are being spent and the increases in property taxes and everything is
it's
going to be your schools, right? And so that's going
right.
to be the next topic that we're going to be talking about. So
That was butter.
it's not a good transition unless you mention it, Stephen. We all know that. So a big election in this was dealt with the school board races, and now we do know that a few years ago the big thing was like Moms for Liberty and these more conservative groups that really went out and went for school boards. That's where the electoral strategy resided. And they had a lot of success in the past elections. They won a lot of school boards. Um, they did very, very well. This election, those Moms for Liberty and these parental rights groups, so called, the New Jersey Project, basically didn't do well at all in these elections. As a matter of fact, there was another group called Districts for Democracy, which won but with a 65% margin on the candidates they supported. And they were on as the Asbury Park Press calls, the pro public education group. I don't really like that name. I think that moniker is a bit um, bias, I'll say. But basically, the pro public education group, which consists of the New Jersey Public Education Coalition, joined hands with the Democratic aligned Sweep New Jersey. Of 536 candidates, it supported 61% had won. I'm sorry. Meanwhile, the New Jersey Project, which is the parental rights group, endorsed 470 school board candidates, and 68% won. But where the races were contested between parental rights candidates and their opponents, 58% of the 311 endorsed candidates um, had had won. So basically, the New Jersey Public Education Coalition had overall had a very successful night, and um, they beat a lot of parental rights incumbents across the state. So I suppose that the question that should be asked is why these candidates did not perform nearly as well as they did in previous elections. Now, in certain areas, the parental rights groups did fairly well, right? They did well in the Ramapo Indian Hills Regional School Board. They did well in in certain other areas, but they didn't do well in places like Morris County in New Jersey, where the Moms for Liberty endorsed slate in Pequannock School District lost nearly was losing, and there's still provisional ballots, was losing by nearly 10% margin. Um, and they were the incumbents for this race. Um, so basically, it was kind of a mixed bag, but for the most part, you saw a lot of pushback against these quote unquote parental rights groups. My question is, why do we think we see that? Um, Personally, I think that it all comes back to where the money lies, right? The New Jersey Teachers Union is one of the biggest groups, lobbyist groups in the state of New Jersey. And I think that in an off-year election like the one that we've seen, where these groups had put behind their money, now they couldn't directly give to candidates in the same way because of some rules. It's a nonpartisan election, a school board. But where they put the most of their money, they saw the most of their gains come back. And I think in an off-year election, that's just simply what you're going to see. I think that's why the Democrats had such a good night. They New Jersey Teachers Union pretty much swept. It was something like 90% of the candidates that they endorsed and supported won in the Senate and the General Assembly, right? So it's like obviously the biggest lobbyist group is going to put it out, especially in an election that was off year. You're not going to have as many people out there and really invigorated. And also, these parental issues of school they haven't been in the news as much. These things of like what's going on in the school libraries, what's going on in the what are being taught directly to the students. These were big issues during 2020 and 2021. But now 2023 has rolled around and it seems like they're not in the news every day like they used to be. And so when it's not front and center, people fall back to saying, like, you know what? I'm sending my kids to the school and the administrators can handle it. And I think that all goes into play as to why you're seeing this mixed bag of results where people aren't as super invigorated into these issues anymore.
Yeah, I think so. Excuse me. I have two principal thoughts on this. One, I would tend to agree with you. I think that the circumstances of the pandemic and children being forced essentially to go to school in the house and the parents are forced to work from home really gave parents a unique opportunity during the COVID pandemic to see exactly what their children were learning in school. Something that a parent normally, you when I was growing up, it was like you get a teacher conference in the beginning of the year, and then, you know, essentially whatever I tell mom and dad we're learning, that's all they know. That's what it is. That's up to them. I think this inside look that the pandemic gave parents was really the big motivating factor. And to your point, since that's just socially not the case right now, maybe parents have kind of taken their foot off the gas, or real life, so to say, has resumed, and they simply don't have the attention or the means to be as involved in the education that their children are getting. Incorrect or correct as that may be is beside the point. What I do find to be very interesting, though, is that these issues about what's going on in the classrooms, about the policies that schools are putting forward, are still very much an issue. And I think it's interesting that parents are not as vigorously involved, because we talked about a few weeks ago, what was it, like 2 weeks ago, the issues regarding Halloween and costumes, right? And prior to that, we had a discussion about the suggested guidelines that the New Jersey Department of Education put out on dealing with, transgender students. Again, issues that parents should be involved in. And you're right, the lack of support, the decrease in this sort of activism is a little bit jarring, because as much as these issues might not seem or feel like they're in our face all the time, they are still very much issues that need to be dealt and contended with. So I feel, that those are my concise thoughts on that. And then the second thing that I think is just interesting to note, and you had mentioned this, but these elections are nonpartisan. So it's not like we're electing Democrats and Republicans to the school boards. But what I think is very interesting, and you alluded to this many times, is where that money comes from. Who are these candidates funded by? Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, I believe America, suffers from a two-party syndrome. And I say suffers because I think it just ails this country and all things that it touches, that we're stuck with these two pretty reprehensible parties. But a lot of the money and a lot of the campaigning that was going on was largely partisan political. They were talking about, MAGA extremists, people that want to get on the school board, and, liberal extremists that want to be on the school board. And I think giving a political tint to something that is very purposefully nonpartisan really dilutes the conversation, because your children's education shouldn't really be political. Because I think at the end of the day, your politics are based on, a lot of things, your faith, your morals, things that I don't necessarily believe need to be funneled into the equation when we're deciding what's important for our children to learn and not to learn. So I think maybe moving forward, clearing the waters Yeah, I expected that. Clearing the waters a bit on, exactly who is funding these candidates, what do they stand for, and it all comes down, as everything does in this country, to the money. Where's the source of the money? You could pull it back and you could say, oh, this candidate got their money from, you know, oh, this organization that has a nonpartisan title. Well, where'd they get their money? Oh, that big Republican donor, that pumps money into every election for all the Republicans. That's your problem. So follow the money. It'll give you the answers that you need. Maybe not the answers that you want, but the answers that you need. And we can try and do our best to get partisanship out of these elections and put forward people who treat these school board elections as what they are, school board elections, and focus on things like parental advocacy. That is a nonpartisan issue. Every parent should want to be an advocate for their child and what's best for them, regardless of what your politics are. So those are the kind of people that we need to support.
Sure, I agree with a lot of that. Where the only place I push back is morals and faith and all of those things directly go into what you think your children should be learning in schools. And while we should for the most part agree with what our children should be learning in schools, right? They should be learning reading, writing, and arithmetic. You also go to school to learn how to interact with the people around you and how to um, be a functioning member of society. And that's where faith and morals and other things come in, and those are important conversations to have as well. I just don't think I think we suffer from a problem of like being so divided on those issues that people don't know which way is up, and that's a much larger problem, and one we need to figure out as well as a nation. But Stephen, we have one more story to wrap up our show here.
We do, and this fits right in, and I think it's pretty fitting. Um, and I'll say this before we even start. This young gentleman we're about to talk about, I did reach out, and hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe Chad, maybe you're seeing this, maybe you're checking us out. We want you to come on. We want to talk to you because I think this is a brilliant story and a breath of fresh air almost for the conversation that we just had, and for young people, obviously in the state of New Jersey, but across the country, to show that you can affect change, at a young age. So this gentleman, his name is Chad Wood. Last year, he was a senior at Sparta High School. And this year, he just earned elected seat on the school board for Sparta. So he is one of the youngest people to ever be elected to this position, especially in Sparta. And I think his motivations are very, very interesting. So throughout his 4 years as a high school student, he was involved in student government. I believe he was the student body president all 4 years, which is a remarkable achievement. He's well liked by his peers. The kid's clearly an advocate. Interestingly, he served as the student representative last year when he was a senior to the school board. And I think this story is brilliant. I think it exactly highlights, why we need fresh young people who are privy to the conversations, who understand the way the culture is moving forward, especially in a school board setting. But while he was a student representative last year, the then president of the school board, his name was Kurt Morris, had made a motion to stop live streaming the school board meetings because he contended that everybody who would want to attend would be there and they were present, so we don't need to stream them anymore. This kid, 18 years old, the student representative, stood up, disagreed, and made some pretty valuable points. And he even offered, like, what about working parents who can't be here, but they want to watch virtually? All of these other things. And ultimately, his motion won. So this kid prevented, the school boards from stopping streaming these meetings. And now they get over 1,000 views weekly. And I can almost guarantee you, I've been to a school board meeting. 1,000 people are not showing up for a school board meeting. So this kid has done an incredible job at being an advocate, not only for what he thinks is the right thing as a student, but for the parents to have access to these boards and to see, exactly what is going on. He is a driven kid, and I just think it's a brilliant, brilliant story about a young man who was a part of a system, worked his way, saw how it worked, affected change from one side, got out and said, this is what I need to do to make this experience better for people who were just in my shoes where I was a year ago. He's a young leader. He's taking charge, and I think he's fighting for the right things for students. And not for nothing, every school board should have somebody who was quite recently a student on it. because I think that's how you get the best information, how you get the best results. And the whole point of all this is for me to just say hats off to you, Mr. Wood. I think it's an incredible story. I think you're doing incredible things. You clearly have a bright future ahead of you, and an inspiring story for any young person who has been told that they can't make a change or that their efforts are, fruitless. It's not true. Hard work, dedication, and being passionate about your mission is going to take you further than anything else. And Chad Wood is an example of that to a T.
Absolutely. Congratulations to Chad Wood. That's an awesome story. You're absolutely right. And look, here's the facts of the matter. The people that know what's going on in the school more than anybody else are people that's in the school, right? So students, young people, if you can't run yet, like if you're recently a graduate, run for these offices. These are important offices. These mean something. That's where you're going to affect the most change, believe it or not. It's going to be in these local, small school board type elections. You are going to effectuate the most amount of change. So if you're a young person and you want to get in the door, if you see problems and you want to change them, this is where you change them. This is where you fight. Uh, Hats off to him. Like you said, Stephen, that's an awesome story, inspirational story, and something that we can all look to as a place to start as a young generation. Start with schools, start with the kids, because as the great New Jerseyan once said, I believe the children are the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. So congratulations, Mr. Wood, and hopefully it's nothing but success for him over at and the Sparta School District. But Stephen, look, like all good things, this too must come to an end. And we do have a Thanksgiving holiday coming up. So we wish everybody a very happy and healthy Thanksgiving. I hope you spend time with friends and family and enjoy that. We will be taking the week off. I think it's a well-deserved week off as two law students.
Certainly.
And I hope you take the week off too and enjoy your time and have a good Thanksgiving. Thank you for indulging us once again. And we will talk to you in about 2 weeks. Stephen, I will give you any last words you would like to give.
No, I want to wrap up and just say again, I think the story that we just talked about, Chad Wood, incredible story. Hope to have him on. I would love to talk with him just about his motivations and what the experience was like running a campaign at the age 18. Granted, he had two running mates. It was a three-party ticket or a three-person ticket, but he's the star of the show. He's doing some incredible stuff. So I hope we have the opportunity to talk to him sometime in the future. I want to echo the same sentiment. Young people, people our age, even people older than us, change happens in small pieces. Justice, as they say in law, justice is slow. It's not swift all the time, but it is eventually delivered. And I believe change functions the same way. It's not quick, but meaningful change often happens. But it's slow, and you got to get involved. And those small wins are really ultimately what surmounts the big wins over a greater period of time. So getting involved, starting young, being passionate, and understanding that the system is not here to keep you out. You have to get in, and you have to make it work for you. And Chad was doing a great job of that. Ultimately, just very proud of the kid. On top of that, I agree with you. Well-deserved break that we are going to be on. I'm very excited to go home, see some family, eat some good food, relax, and get ready to finish the year strong, both academically and hopefully with some very interesting and incredible stories here. I'm bridging the gap for Jersey First. And I imagine on our next episode, we'll talk a little bit about the Thanksgiving holiday. But I want to say preemptively, I am quite thankful that AJ, you and I have the opportunity, A, to have these discussions, but B, have them facilitated by an organization as great as Jersey First that gives us all the support that we could ask for. And I hope that all of our friends in the office over there are also taking next week off, because we're a busy, busy operation and everybody could use a break, like I said, so we can finish the end of the year strong. But that is all for me.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, everybody listening. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and we will talk to you soon. For Jersey First TV and Bridging the Gap, I'm AJ Malillo.
I'm Stephen Rombolo.
Have a good one, everyone.